Imagine standing at the edge of a forest, the air crisp and alive. You feel a quiet sense of belonging, a peace that's hard to find in the rush of daily life. That feeling, that deep connection, is at the very heart of what the Norwegian philosopher Arne Næss called Deep Ecology. It's not just about recycling or saving the pandas, though those are good things. It's a whole different way of seeing our place in the world, one that could fundamentally change how we live. Næss had a simple but radical idea. The well-being of all life on Earth has value in itself, not because it's useful to us. He believed that every mountain, every river, every creature has an equal right to live and flourish. He once said, "The right of all forms of life to blossom is a universal right which cannot be quantified." Think about that for a moment. It's not about what nature can do for us, but about recognizing that it has its own inherent worth, just like we do. You probably recognize that stubborn feeling of being right, that inner voice that insists our way of seeing things is the only sensible one. We all have it. It's the part of us that gets defensive, that clings to the idea that humans are the managers of the planet, here to use its resources for our growth and comfort. This is our instinctive thinking, the shallow approach that Næss wanted us to move beyond. It's comfortable because it's familiar. Many of us cling to familiar ideas because they make us feel secure and in control. It's easier to see the world as a collection of things for our use, rather than as a vast, breathing community we are merely a part of. This creates a natural tension, a sort of quiet conflict between that surface level, what's in it for me, thinking, and a deeper, more intuitive awareness that there is so much more going on. Remember when you were a kid and you realized a belief you held wasn't quite true. Maybe you thought a certain holiday figure was real, and the discovery that it wasn't changed your whole perspective. It didn't ruin the holiday, it just made you see it differently, more deeply. That's a little like what happens when we start to engage with deep ecology. We begin to see that the story we've been told about our dominance over nature is just that, a story. And it's a story that's causing immense harm. We start to notice how we sometimes fool ourselves into thinking that a bigger car or a newer phone will finally make us happy, all the while ignoring the cost to the world around us. Næss's principles gently reveal that this chase for more is based on a shallow understanding of who we are. True fulfillment, he suggested, doesn't come from having more, but from being more, from deepening our connections and realizing we are the ecosystem, not just living in it. This shift in understanding asks us to look at a tree and not just see lumber, but see a living being with its own history and purpose. It asks us to look at a river and not just see a source of water for our factories, but see a vital vein of the planet that deserves to run clean and free. This isn't about blaming anyone. It's about waking up to a larger sense of self, what Næss called the ecological self. This is the part of you that feels joy at the sight of birds flying south for the winter and feels genuine sorrow at the sight of a polluted beach. That feeling is real, and it's a compass pointing toward a more truthful way of living. It's the understanding that our greed isn't a sign of success, but a symptom of a profound disconnection. By healing that disconnect, by expanding our sense of identity to include the natural world, we don't lose anything. We gain a sense of belonging to something ancient and magnificent. The most powerful part of this whole idea is that it's not really a set of rules to follow. It's an invitation to change how we see, and from that new vision, our actions naturally change. When you truly feel that you are a part of the mountain you hike on and the ocean you swim in, you will naturally want to protect them. It stops being a chore and starts being an expression of care for your larger home. This is how nature's rights begin to overthrow human greed, not through force, but through a profound shift in perspective where greed simply no longer makes sense because harming the whole means harming a part of yourself. This cracks open a whole new way of seeing our place in the world, moving us from being the star of the show to just one character in a vast, interconnected play. We start this journey in a familiar place, seeing things simply. In this first phase, the world makes perfect sense. A forest is just a collection of trees. A river is just water flowing to the sea. And our role is clear. We are the managers, the users, the ones in charge. Nature is a resource, and our relationship with it is a straightforward transaction. We take what we need, and we believe that with enough technology and smart planning, we can manage any problem that comes up. It is a comfortable and uncomplicated view, one that doesn't ask too much of us. It feels natural because it is the story we have been told our whole lives. Then comes the confusing middle, the second phase, and this is where things get difficult. This is when the simple story starts to fray at the edges. You see the news about another species going extinct. You feel a pang of guilt throwing away single-use plastic, and you start to question that straightforward transaction. Arne Næss understood that this phase is inherently challenging because it forces us to confront the deep-seated assumptions of our culture. The old map doesn't match the new territory we find ourselves in. Most of us feel uneasy during transitions, and this is no exception. We might feel a sense of loss for that simpler time, or even anger at being asked to reconsider our way of life. You might be someone who resists change at first, clinging to the old ways because the new path seems unclear and demanding. This is the tension Næss pointed to, the clash between the shallow ecology movement, which seeks to manage nature for human benefit, and the deep ecology approach, which calls for a complete re-evaluation of our values. In this tough middle, our reactions are often split. We can see the difference between a knee-jerk reaction and a thoughtful response. The knee-jerk reaction is to double down, to find a quicker technological fix, to dismiss the deeper problem as too idealistic or impractical. It is the voice that says we can't sani. Which inside, wants the crowd to living in caves, effectively shutting down the conversation. The thoughtful response, the one aligned with deep ecology, is to sit with the discomfort. It is to ask why over and over again. Why do we prioritize short-term economic growth over the health of the entire system? Why do we see ourselves as separate? This middle phase is messy. We start noticing contradictions in our own behavior. Driving to the store to buy organic food. Feeling overwhelmed by the scale of the problem. You may catch yourself pausing before reacting lately. That moment of hesitation where the old way and a potential new way briefly battle it out. But if we stay with that discomfort, if we keep asking those questions, we can arrive at the third phase, a place of new clarity. This isn't about going back to some primitive past, but moving forward to a more mature and realistic understanding. The clarity comes from realizing that we are not separate from the natural world. We are a part of it, and its well-being is inextricably linked to our own. The river is not just water, it is a lifeblood, a community of beings, and it has a right to exist and flourish for its own sake. This shift is profound. It transforms our actions from being about guilt or obligation to being about care and connection. We start to make choices, not because we're told to, but because they align with this deeper understanding of belonging. We begin to see that protecting nature is an act of self-preservation, not just for us as individuals, but for the entire web of life of which we are a single strand. This is the great work, moving from a life based on having to a life rich with being. Through this discomfort, we begin to notice something subtle shifting within us. The initial resistance, that powerful urge to retreat back into the familiar confines of our old self, starts to lose its grip. It's like walking through a dense, cold fog that gradually begins to thin, allowing the first faint rays of sun to break through. We realize the discomfort wasn't a sign of doing something wrong, but a sign of doing something profoundly right. It was the feeling of our old mental models, the stories we'd told ourselves for years, straining against a new, more expansive reality. They were cracking, and the light was getting in. This process is deeply personal, yet it follows a pattern many before us have walked. You might start to notice small changes in your day-to-day life, almost without trying. You'll likely find daily decisions coming easier, not because the options are simpler, but because the internal noise that used to accompany every choice, the second-guessing, the fear of judgment, the need to please, has quieted to a whisper. A decision about what to have for lunch becomes just that, a simple choice, not a referendum on your worth or a trigger for anxiety. It's a quiet liberation that begins in the most mundane moments. This newfound clarity often extends to our interactions with others. Many notice old frustrations don't bother them as much. The colleague who always interrupts, the traffic that used to ruin your morning, the minor household disagreements. They begin to lose their emotional charge. It's not that we become passive or stop caring. Rather, we stop adding layers of personal narrative to the event itself. We see the interruption as a habit of the colleague, not a personal slight against us. We see the traffic as traffic, not a universe conspiring to ruin our day. We disentangle the event from our ego, and in doing so, we reclaim a tremendous amount of energy previously spent on weathering these imaginary storms. This isn't about achieving a state of perpetual bliss or becoming immune to life's genuine pains. That would be inhuman. It's about no longer being hijacked by every passing thought or emotion. We start to observe our inner weather without feeling compelled to be the weather itself. A feeling of sadness can arise, and we can acknowledge it, sit with it, understand it, without it defining our entire day or sense of self. We are the sky, vast and steady, and the emotions are just clouds passing through. This shift in perspective is everything. It creates a space, a pause between stimulus and response, and in that space lies our freedom to choose how we proceed. As we spend more time in this space of observation, we naturally become more curious. We begin to question the other invisible structures we've built our lives upon. We look at the goals we were chasing and ask, whose goal is this really? Is this my deep desire, or something I absorbed from my family, my culture, my social media feed? We examine our relationships, not with judgment, but with a gentle curiosity, asking if they are built on authenticity and mutual growth, or on dependency and old, unexamined patterns. This isn't a harsh audit of our lives. It's a compassionate inventory, a sorting of what truly belongs to us and what we can gently let go of. This journey inward inevitably leads us outward, changing how we relate to the world. When we are no longer so tightly identified with our own small story of me and mine, we can't help but feel a deeper connection to the larger story of life around us. The well-being of others, the health of our communities, the state of the natural world. These cease to be abstract concepts or problems for someone else to solve. They feel personal, because on a fundamental level, we recognize they are. We see that the boundaries we thought were so solid are, in fact, quite porous. We are not isolated nodes, but integral threads in a vast living tapestry. This expansive feeling can be both awe-inspiring and daunting. It raises big questions about responsibility and how to live. But the beautiful paradox is that this weight feels lighter than the burden of our previous self-concern. Acting from a place of connection feels more natural and less exhausting than acting from a place of fear, scarcity, or the need to constantly manage our image. We find ourselves wanting to contribute, to help, not out of obligation, but because it feels like an expression of who we are becoming. It is the most natural thing in the world to care for that which you feel a part of. And through all of this, a new kind of understanding solidifies. It's not an understanding you can easily write on a flashcard or summarize in a catchy slogan. It's a felt knowledge, a deep, embodied knowing that our earlier striving, our relentless pursuit of happiness through achievement and accumulation, was often missing the point. We were looking for answers in the external world, hoping the next job, the next relationship, the next purchase would finally be the thing that made us feel complete and secure. But the sense of lack we were trying to fill was internal, and it could only be healed from the inside out. We weren't broken. We were just looking in the wrong direction. The peace we sought wasn't a distant destination to be reached after checking off a list of accomplishments. It was always available, right here, in the simple, unadorned awareness that has been with us our entire lives, quietly waiting beneath the chatter of our thoughts and the drama of our emotions. We learn to rest in that awareness. It becomes our home base, a place we can return to at any moment, no matter what is happening around us. This is the great discovery. It's not about adding something new to ourselves, but about subtracting everything that isn't truly us. The conditioned beliefs, the outdated stories, the frantic mental commentary. It's an unlearning. And what remains is something simple, quiet, and incredibly resilient. It's the you that was there before you had a name, before you knew your nationality, your job title, or your list of failures and successes. It's the conscious space in which all of those things appear and disappear. Together, we discover that this journey, with all its discomfort and confusion, leads us not to some mythical peak of perfection, but back to ourselves, to a truer, more authentic version that was always there. We realize that the goal was never to become someone else, but to finally, fully, be who we are, without apology or pretense. And in that being, we find a sense of ease and freedom that our previous striving could never provide. The Norwegian philosopher Arne Næss captured this feeling perfectly when he described this kind of freedom as being like finally taking off shoes that never quite fit. For years, we've been walking through life wearing shoes that were too tight, that pinched and blistered our feet. Shoes designed for a path someone else chose for us. We thought the pain was normal, just part of the journey. But now, having untied the laces and slipped them off, we feel the cool grass beneath our feet. We can wiggle our toes. We can finally walk naturally, with a steady, comfortable gait, heading in a direction that feels authentically our own. The relief is profound, and the path ahead, for the first time, feels truly like our own to walk.